Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Philip Marks. I turned 63 weeks ago, and I'd worked at Halston Forge and Supply for exactly 27 years. 11 days. That's how close I was to hitting the threshold for my $96,000 retirement bonus. 11 damn days. But instead of celebrating with my team and planning my retirement trip with my daughter and grandson, I was sitting across from a man half my age, Carson Dade, listening to him talk about corporate restructuring and forward strategy optimization. I should have seen it coming. The way he glanced at me in meetings, how he'd freeze me out of projects I used to lead, the subtle ageist digs like, we need a fresher energy in logistics. And now here he was, sliding a yellow envelope across the polished glass conference table like he was dealing cards in Vegas. "Philip," he said, not even looking me in the eye. "We've made the decision to eliminate your position effective immediately. Of course, we want to offer you a generous severance, 6 weeks' pay, continued healthcare for 3 months. All we need is your signature by end of week." I didn't say a word. Just stared at the envelope. Inside were the standard papers, termination notice, severance breakdown, and a 2-year non-compete clause that would basically blacklist me from any job in the field. I looked up, forcing calm into my voice. "I gave 27 years to this company. And we appreciate that," Carson replied, shifting in his seat like the weight of his own words was too much for his spine. I didn't lash out. Didn't cuss. Didn't even flinch. Just nodded once. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said. Then I stood up, shook his hand, yes, shook it, and walked out of that room like it was any other Thursday. The floor below, the warehouse I had helped design, reorganize, and rebuild after the fire in '06, suddenly felt unfamiliar. Like I was a stranger in the one place I'd given more of myself than anywhere else. I packed my desk slowly, like a man gathering pieces of his past. A Father's Day mug my daughter made in 3rd grade. A faded photo of my late wife, Evelyn, from the 2012 company barbecue. A stack of safety awards I once thought meant something. Tommy Hargrove, one of the forklift guys I trained over a decade ago, walked by and stopped at my door. "This is wrong, Mr. Marks," he said, voice low. "Everyone here knows it." I gave him a small smile. "Sometimes things don't work out the way we expect, Tommy." He looked like he wanted to say more, but I just patted his arm and turned back to my packing. At the security gate, Marvin, who'd manned the front desk for 20 years, couldn't even look at me when I handed him my badge and keys. The silence said it all. This wasn't about performance. This was about money. About numbers. About cutting costs. $96,000 saved for the company, just like that. Underscore 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 underscore. I drove home in the rain, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Evelyn would have known what to say. She'd tell me to stand up straight, not let them crush me. "You're stronger than any paycheck," she used to say. But all I could hear in my head was Carson's smug tone, that damn envelope rustling across glass. I sat at my kitchen table with a pot of coffee and stared at the severance packet. It felt like betrayal carved into legalese. 27 years reduced to 6 weeks' pay. I opened the drawer where I kept Evelyn's things, photos, letters, her old planner, and found the folder she'd helped me assemble for retirement planning. Inside was the copy of the employee handbook from 2009. I'd co-written part of it with the old CEO, Harold Baxter. And there it was, underlined in red ink. Policy 4.7b, Retirement Eligibility Protection Clause. No employee with 25 plus years of tenure who has reached age 60 may be terminated within 30 days of scheduled retirement bonus eligibility, unless for cause. Restructuring is not grounds for termination under this clause. I blinked. Read it again. My hands started to steady. They weren't allowed to do this. And Carson, he either didn't know about this clause, or worse, he knew and thought I was too old, too tired, or too broken to fight back. I didn't call my daughter Claire. Not yet. She's a partner at a corporate law firm in New York, sharp as a blade and always 3 steps ahead. She'd offered to go over my paperwork a dozen times. But I didn't want to burden her. Or maybe I didn't want her to know I'd failed. Instead, I called someone else. My nephew, Daniel Sloan. Labor attorney. Quiet but deadly when it comes to contract law. We hadn't talked since Evelyn's funeral, but I kept his card. He picked up on the second ring. Uncle Philip. Everything okay? I told him what happened. He listened carefully, then said one sentence that changed everything. Don't sign anything. After hanging up with Daniel, I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. The coffee had gone cold. The rain had stopped. But the silence in the house, our house, was suffocating. Evelyn's favorite clock ticked steadily in the corner, but every second that passed felt like another reminder: I had no job, no bonus, and no plan. I was 60 years old and unemployed. And worse than that. I felt humiliated. The phone started buzzing. A text from Claire. Claire, hey, Dad. Just checking in. How was work? I didn't respond. I couldn't. She'd told me a dozen times to let her look over my retirement file. But I'd been so damn proud. So convinced I had everything under control. I'd been trying to protect her, protect myself from the shame. And now? Now I had nothing but a cheap envelope and a severance clause written by a man who probably thought loyalty was a brand of protein powder. I tried to sleep that night, but I kept replaying everything in my head. 27 years. 27 winters of working double shifts when younger guys called out sick. 27 summers of showing up early, staying late, training interns who got promoted before I ever got a raise. The 2008 recession, when management cut our overtime and told us to dig deep. I dug so deep I missed our anniversary trip. The fire in 2012, I was the one who ran in to shut the gas valve. While others evacuated, I risked my life. The time Evelyn had to go into surgery, and I begged them for half a day off, and they still asked me to take work calls from the hospital parking lot. And for what? So some guy in a suit could save a line item in the budget? It wasn't just betrayal. It was like being erased. The next morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Gray hair. Eyes sunken from too many sleepless nights. A face weathered by time and sacrifice. This wasn't how I pictured retirement. Evelyn and I used to talk about traveling. She wanted to see the Grand Canyon. I promised her we would. But cancer came faster than we expected. She never saw it. And now, neither would I. Not because of cancer, but because some glorified spreadsheet juggler decided I was outdated. That morning, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I cried. Not loud. Not messy. Just 2 quiet tears that rolled down my cheeks and fell into the sink. I stood there, hands gripping the sides of the porcelain, chest heaving like the air had turned into glass. It felt like I had wasted my whole life. Daniel called again that afternoon. Uncle Philip, I reviewed the handbook. That clause is ironclad. Carson Dade can't terminate you this close to your retirement unless there's documented cause. And we both know there isn't. But what does it matter? I asked. They'll just say it's restructuring. End of story. Not if we make it more than a story. He explained the next steps: legal language, precedents, case law. But all I heard was this: you're not crazy. You're not powerless. And you're not alone. Still, I hesitated. Because fighting meant dragging myself through months, maybe years, of legal battles. And honestly, I didn't know if I had it in me. I don't want to spend the next year angry, Daniel. He paused. Then said something that stuck to my ribs like lead. Then don't fight for yourself. Fight for everyone else they did this to. That night, I pulled out the old employee directories. Started making calls. George Murphy. Patricia Walsh. Anita Bell. People I'd worked with for decades, all of them let go in the past year. Every one of them had been within weeks, or days, of retirement bonuses. Each of them had thought it was just them. Just bad luck. Just timing. But it wasn't. It was deliberate. I started taking notes. Cross-checking dates. Building a timeline. What started as a lonely evening at the kitchen table turned into a paper battlefield. I wasn't just another redundant employee. I was a piece of evidence. The final blow came when I opened a dusty old box from Evelyn's side of the closet. Inside was a manila envelope labeled, Philip's retirement, just in case. I hadn't seen it before. But Evelyn had always been the planner. Inside, she had printed out our vacation bucket list. There were notes scribbled in her handwriting. Grand Canyon, fall foliage. Yellowstone before knee surgery. Mount Rushmore, Philip's dream, don't forget. More time with Claire and Jack. Show them what a real summer feels like. I sat down on the floor and hugged the paper to my chest. She had believed I'd make it to retirement. She'd built her dreams around that bonus. Around me. And now it was gone. But something hardened in me that night. Something that had once been soft. They didn't just take a check from me. They stole what little I had left of my wife's dream. The next morning, I called Daniel back. You still got room in that war room of yours? I asked. He chuckled. I'll clear a desk. Daniel's office was sharp. Clean. Cold. The kind of place where young attorneys wear $1,200 shoes and talk in phrases like material breach and pre-litigation exposure. But when I walked in with 2 cardboard folders and a fire in my gut, he cleared the conference table like it was a war zone and said, let's get to work. We laid it all out, termination dates, years of service, ages, roles, patterns. It was all there. A map of betrayal, with Carson Dade standing right in the center like some smug little general overseeing a quiet purge. Daniel pointed to a cluster of names on the whiteboard. 7 employees terminated within 60 days of qualifying for pensions, bonuses, or early retirement incentives. All over 55. All labeled as performance issues or department restructuring. He circled the dates with a red marker. Philip, this isn't just unethical. This is a legal landmine. I handed him the employee handbook from 2009. That clause, 4.7b, I said, tapping the page. I helped write it. It was designed to stop exactly this kind of abuse. Daniel read it 3 times, eyes narrowing with each pass. If this clause is still active and hasn't been revised in recent policy updates. It hasn't, I said flatly. Carson came in swinging, but he never updated any of the base-level contracts. Daniel nodded, pulled up a folder on his laptop, and began typing. Then we have something. Actually, we have a lot. The next few days blurred into phone calls, scans, emails, and meetings. Daniel brought in a paralegal named Maxine, brilliant, fast, and deadly with contract language. She found 4 separate mentions in Halston Forge's HR memos referencing the clause Carson supposedly forgot about. Then came the smoking gun. An email. Dated 6 weeks ago. From Carson to a junior HR rep. Review upcoming retirement bonuses. We need to optimize headcount before those kick in. Don't flag anything to legal, keep this discreet. Maxine printed it and slid it across the table. Daniel leaned back in his chair and whispered, "He's done." But that wasn't the only surprise. A name popped up during our research, George Merriman, age 63. Laid off 3 weeks before his pension matured. He was quiet. Always had been. He used to bring in donuts every Friday and never missed a safety inspection. Daniel found a note in his exit file that didn't match company protocol. Performance inconsistencies, it read. But George had 5 consecutive years of top-tier evaluations. It didn't add up. So I called him. George lived in a modest split level outside of Columbus. When I pulled into his driveway, he was working on a birdhouse with his grandson. "Philip," he said, wiping sawdust off his hands. "Heard you got the axe too." "Yeah. 11 days before my retirement bonus." George looked away, jaw tightening. "They got me at 13 days. We went inside, and I told him everything, Daniel, the clause, the email." George listened quietly, then got up and walked to a locked cabinet. He came back with a black voice recorder and placed it gently on the table. "I don't trust suits," he said. Started recording conversations after Carson joined. Then he hit play. Carson's voice filled the room, crisp and clear. "Look, George. It's not personal. You're a legacy cost. I've got orders from the board, cut anyone nearing a milestone payout. We need fresh blood, not golden parachutes." George stopped the tape. My stomach turned. I'd known Carson was a weasel, but this was intentional. Calculated. Cruel. Daniel nearly choked when I played him the recording. "Holy hell," he muttered. "This is it. This is the match in the powder keg." We spent the next week quietly contacting the other affected employees. Out of the 7, 5 agreed to join us. Daniel drafted a formal complaint to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. A class action lawsuit. And a letter to Halston Forge's board of directors, outlining the extent of the illegal terminations, the recording, and the potential media fallout. But before we filed anything, Daniel asked one question. "You want to hit them hard, or you want to give them a chance to blink first?" I smiled, for the first time in weeks. "Let's give them a choice. Just one." That Friday, Daniel arranged a formal meeting request with Halston's HR department. We included the employment clause, the recorded audio, and a demand. Reinstate all terminated employees' retirement packages. Public apology. Carson Dade's removal. No response. Monday passed. Tuesday morning, Daniel got a reply from Felicia Brewster, the head of HR. "We'd like to arrange a private meeting. The company takes these matters seriously." I pulled up to Daniel's office an hour early the morning of the meeting. I didn't sleep much the night before, not because of anxiety, but anticipation. There's a strange kind of peace in knowing the worst has already happened. Everything after that is just revenge with structure. Daniel greeted me at the door with 2 cups of black coffee and an envelope labeled Plan A. "Still want to give them the choice?" he asked. I nodded. "Then let's give them the rope and see if they hang themselves." At 10 a.m., Halston Forge's HR director, Felicia Brewster, arrived with 2 company attorneys. One was a man in his early 30s who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The other, a woman with sharp cheekbones and an even sharper tone, introduced herself as Counsel for Strategic Mitigation. "Corporate speak for, we're here to make this disappear." Felicia was quieter. Tired. I could tell by her eyes she hadn't been part of Carson's plan. But now she was stuck cleaning up after him. Daniel opened with a calm but firm tone. "We've uncovered multiple terminations in clear violation of Halston Forge's Retirement Eligibility Protection Clause, Policy 4.7b. We have internal documentation and audio evidence of intent to discriminate based on age and proximity to retirement payouts. He placed George's recording device gently on the table. Felicia paled. The lawyers flinched. The woman started speaking, but Daniel cut her off. Before you respond, please understand, this is not a negotiation. It's a courtesy. He laid out the terms. Full retirement packages for all 7 terminated employees. Back pay with interest. A formal written apology from the company. And Carson Dade's termination, effective immediately. If they didn't comply, the lawsuit would go public. The EEOC complaint would be filed within the hour. And the recording? It would be leaked to every business journal in the Midwest. There was a long silence. Then the younger lawyer cleared his throat and said exactly what I hoped he would. We'll need time to consult with the board. Daniel handed him a printed statement. You've got 48 hours. As soon as they left, I slumped in the chair like the air had been holding me up. Daniel sat across from me and crossed his arms. You're not just fighting for yourself, you know. I know, I said. That's the only reason I'm still standing. The next day was the calm before the storm. I spent it reaching out to George, Patricia, Anita, and the others. We talked, vented, laughed bitterly. It was like a survivors group, people who'd given their lives to a company that treated them like expired coupons. But what struck me most was how grateful they were to finally have a voice. You're doing what none of us had the fight left to do, George said. It wasn't heroism. It was necessity. If I didn't fight back, Carson would keep doing this to the next guy, and the one after him, until there was no one left over 50. By Thursday morning, no call had come. Daniel told me not to worry. Their silence is a bluff. But part of me, a very old, tired part, wondered if they were just going to drag this out and dare us to follow through. That afternoon, Daniel's phone rang. It was Felicia. I want to meet, she said. Privately. No lawyers. She met us that evening at a small cafe on the edge of town. No suit. No laptop. Just a woman in her 50s wearing a windbreaker and stress in her eyes. Carson went rogue, she said, stirring her tea. He bypassed internal review on every one of those terminations. The board didn't know. Then how did 7 people get fired under identical circumstances? I asked. She looked away. Because Carson presented it as restructuring. Departmental optimization. He was clever. Never put too much in writing, except to the junior staff who wouldn't question him. HR only got the paperwork after the fact. Daniel leaned in. Are you prepared to testify to that? Felicia nodded slowly. I didn't agree with what happened. But I didn't stop it either. If this goes public, I want to help make it right. Back at Daniel's office, we went to work. With Felicia willing to cooperate, the case went from solid to bulletproof. We added her statement to the formal complaint. And then, just before midnight, Maxine, Daniel's paralegal, found one more piece of gold. An email from Carson, sent to a vendor by mistake. In it, he joked. Clearing out the retirement leeches one severance at a time. Lean and mean by Q4. It was time-stamped. Traceable. And just incriminating enough to push the board into panic mode. Friday morning, Daniel filed the paperwork. Federal complaint. EEOC submission. Press release, held in draft, ready for a single click. Then we sent one last message to Halston's board. You now have until Monday at noon to accept the terms. After that, the story goes public, and so does the recording. Monday came. And with it, silence. No emails. No phone calls. No last-minute apology from the board. At 12:01 p.m., Daniel pressed send. The EEOC complaint was filed. The press release was distributed to 5 business media outlets. And the audio recording of Carson Dade, mocking us as retirement leeches, was emailed, anonymously, to 3 investigative journalists and the regional union rep who'd been waiting for something to sink his teeth into. Less than 3 hours later, it hit the wire. Halston Forge accused of systematic age discrimination, secret audio leaked. By 5 p.m., local news picked it up. By 7 p.m., national labor watchdog accounts were resharing the story with hashtags like #GoldenYearsHeist and #CorporatePurgeExposed. By midnight, the story was trending on LinkedIn. And Carson? He was quiet. Too quiet. Tuesday morning, Daniel received a letter from Halston's legal team. It was short. Cold. And so very corporate. Halston Forge takes these allegations seriously and has placed Mr. Dade on administrative leave pending internal review. We are open to resolving the matter constructively and would welcome further discussion. Translation: we're cornered. But we're still pretending we aren't. Daniel drafted a firm but fair reply, restating our demands, and now adding one more. A public statement by the board acknowledging the violation and pledging systemic reform. We had momentum. We had leverage. But I had a feeling Carson wouldn't go down without dragging someone else with him. I was right. Wednesday morning, Tommy Hargrove, my former trainee at the warehouse, called me in a panic. "Mr. Marks," he said, whispering like someone might be listening. "Carson came back to the building last night. After hours. We saw him on the security footage." "What was he doing?" "Pulling files. Like, actual files from storage. I don't think HR authorized it." Daniel narrowed his eyes when I told him. "If he's deleting or removing internal records, that's not just unethical, that's tampering." We called Felicia. Her voice was grim. "I'll check the security logs." An hour later, she confirmed it. Carson had used his executive access code to enter the HR server room at 9:47 p.m. and removed 3 storage drives. No clearance. No approval. We called it in. By Thursday, a federal investigator from the EEOC was officially assigned to our case. Then came the bomb. Friday morning, Carson filed a countersuit against me. Defamation and breach of confidentiality. The media went nuts. The narrative shifted. Now it was, fired employee retaliates, CEO alleges smear campaign. I saw my own name on the news. My face on headlines. It should have terrified me. But instead, it lit a fire in my chest. Because Carson had just overplayed his hand. Now he wasn't just trying to save face, he was panicking. Daniel called an emergency press conference on my behalf that same afternoon. We didn't get flashy. Just me at a podium in a local union hall, in front of a backdrop that read, "Workers are not disposable." I told the truth. About the years I gave to Halston Forge. About the broken promises. About the envelope that stole my retirement 11 days before it was mine. I didn't cry. But my voice cracked when I said Evelyn's name. That night, I got a voicemail from George Merriman. "You looked like a damn general up there, Philip. I'm proud to have stood beside you." Then Claire called. My daughter. Her voice was soft. "I saw you on TV, Dad. Jack wants to know why people are cheering for his grandpa." I smiled so hard I thought my face might break. "Tell him I'm fighting a bully," I said. And we're almost done. The day after my press conference, Carson Dade finally showed his face. He gave a live interview on a business podcast, trying to set the record straight. I sat at my kitchen table, Evelyn's old mug in my hand, listening to him spin. This has been a coordinated campaign by disgruntled former employees who misunderstood strategic decisions. There was no malicious intent, just unfortunate timing. He kept calling us legacy personnel, like we were rusted tools tossed into a junk drawer. Then he said it. I was hired to modernize a stagnating company, and frankly, that means hard decisions. Sometimes loyalty doesn't equal productivity. My stomach twisted. But Daniel just smiled. Perfect, he said. Keep talking, Carson. Because while Carson was on air insulting every worker over 50, Daniel was on the phone, with Halston Forge's board of directors. And the chairwoman of that board? Her name was Clara Whitaker. She'd co-signed my very first warehouse expansion budget back in '99. And she remembered me. He's what? She said when Daniel played the recording again. No. I never authorized mass terminations near retirement thresholds. Then Daniel explained the clause. The leaked email. The fake performance write-ups. And how Carson had bypassed every internal policy to push out experienced employees before their pensions matured. There was a long pause. Then Clara said something I'll never forget. I trusted that man to modernize our business, not bleed our people dry. What we didn't know at the time, what Carson didn't know, was that while he was preparing another legal counterattack, the board had already convened behind his back. By Friday, an emergency vote was scheduled. And Felicia, HR director turned whistleblower, was invited to speak. She didn't hold back. She brought emails, personnel files, internal memos, and copies of the retirement clause Carson violated 7 times. Then she added something I hadn't expected. Mr. Dade instructed us to suppress certain severance files, she said. He claimed the bonus policy had been phased out, which was a lie. He also modified employee evaluations to justify terminations. The room, she later told me, went dead silent. By Monday morning, the results were in. Carson Dade, terminated for cause. Effective immediately. His stock options. Voided. His severance. Revoked. His name. Removed from Halston's website within the hour. But the twist wasn't just that he was fired. It was what they found after he left. Turns out, Carson had been quietly moving company funds. 2 consulting firms on Halston's payroll were traced back to shell companies, with Carson's name on the LLC registration. He wasn't just firing us to save money. He was pocketing a cut of the operational savings by laundering payouts through fake vendors. It exploded into a full-blown investigation. Federal agents raided his condo in Cincinnati. His devices were seized. And within days, the Department of Labor got involved. Daniel got the call first. He put it on speakerphone so I could hear. Mr. Marks, this is Special Agent Roth from the Office of Labor Violations. We'd like to thank you for coming forward. Your actions didn't just expose workplace discrimination, they helped uncover corporate embezzlement. I didn't know what to say. So I just whispered, "You're welcome." A week later, I received an official letter from Halston's board. It contained 3 things. 1. A formal written apology, signed by all 11 directors. 2. Confirmation of full restoration of retirement bonuses, for me and all 6 employees involved. 3. And this. In honor of your courage and commitment to fairness, the board has unanimously approved a new corporate safeguard. The Philip Marks Employee Integrity Clause will be added to all future HR policies. No employee within 90 days of retirement eligibility may be terminated without full board review and legal oversight. I sat in my backyard that night, the letter in my lap, and stared up at the stars. For the first time in months, I felt still. Evelyn would have been proud. Not just because I fought back. But because I won, and didn't lose myself doing it. The check arrived on a Tuesday. Not in some digital deposit, not from some HR portal, no, they sent it by courier. A thick white envelope, hand-delivered with my name written in bold ink. Inside was the full amount. $96,000 retirement bonus. $41,000 in back contributions. $7,000 in interest and legal restitution. Total, $144,000. But more than the number, was the letter. Mr. Philip Marks. We failed you. You helped build this company, and you deserve to retire with dignity. Your courage exposed injustice we were blind to. On behalf of the board, and every future employee protected by the new policy, thank you. At the bottom, 11 signatures. And underneath that, a printed phrase I didn't expect. Marks Clause activated, employee protected. That's what they were calling it now, the Marks Clause. It felt surreal. A man they tried to discard became the name in the handbook they'll all be trained on. I didn't throw a party. That's not who I am. Instead, I packed a bag. Claire and Jack, my daughter and grandson, drove down the next morning. Jack didn't understand most of it. He just knew Grandpa stood up to a bad man in a tie. We walked the garden, ate lunch at Evelyn's favorite diner, and then I showed them the RV brochure sitting on my kitchen counter. Claire blinked. Dad, are you serious? I've got about 10 national parks I promised your mother I'd see. I figure it's time I keep that promise. She laughed through her tears. Can we join you for a few legs of the trip? I smiled. That was always the plan. The following week, George Merriman hosted a backyard barbecue. All 7 of us were there, me, George, Patricia, Anita, the others. We ate too much, laughed too hard, and passed around copies of the settlement letters like kids showing off report cards. But more than anything, we felt something most of us hadn't in years. Respected. Carson. He never resurfaced in the corporate world. Turns out, embezzlement and federal investigation aren't great for your resume. Last I heard, he was in pre-trial hearings and facing serious jail time. Daniel and Maxine kept me updated as things progressed. They even offered to loop me in if a civil case opened for damages, but I told them no. I didn't need to bury him in court. He buried himself. 2 months later, Halston Forge contacted me one last time. The board wanted to know if I'd consider returning, as a paid advisor to help oversee new ethics policy implementation. I declined. Not because I was bitter, but because my story there was over. Some fights, once won, don't need to be revisited. They just need to be remembered. So now. I write. Sometimes I drive. Sometimes I stop and take pictures of canyons, lakes, and the trees Evelyn always wanted to see. And sometimes I get letters. From former Halston employees. From workers at other companies who saw my story and realized they weren't crazy for feeling cheated. Some ask for advice. Others just say thank you. One man sent a note that still chokes me up. I watched you speak on TV while holding my severance papers in my hands. You made me realize I'm not broken. Just betrayed. And now. I'm fighting too. I didn't set out to be a hero. I just wanted what I earned. But in fighting for that, I gave a little hope to people like me. People who gave their life to a company, and almost let that company take the rest of them with it. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.